Hello, everybody, and welcome to Psychology. It is Psychology Flipped with Mrs. Clemens. And we are going to flip our learning today, and we're going to try very hard to keep calm and study psychology. All right, so our topic today is psychology's perspectives, and we're going to talk about the major 7 perspectives. I don't know if you notice, but there's one or two or possibly 7 sevens on the screen. And there's a reason for them being there, not just because 7 is my favorite number and I was born on April 7th. Wish me a happy birthday when that time comes. But anyway, no, it's because we're talking about 7 perspectives. And as you guys know, you get to know when you have to write based on the animation. And so I couldn't choose. I just love them all, just like the 7 perspectives. So I have 7 different 7s. So get ready. All right, so we know we are writing this slide because we have our first 7. Her name is Cindy. That's the name I just came up with. So our first perspective is the neuroscience perspective. And so I know we're kind of new in psychology here, but neuro is brain. We're talking about the brain. And so obviously in this perspective, we're going to focus on how the body and the brain influences our emotions, our memories, and our sensory experiences. And that's actually going to be our first unit after our introduction. We're going to be talking about the body and the brain. So, for example, if you couldn't remember the names of your parents and you went to a psychologist who adheres to the neuroscience perspective, what might they say? Now, you're not writing that, by the way. We're trying to think about this. What might they say? Well, so they're focusing on the physical body. They're going to say that something's wrong. There's some sort of physical issue with your brain that's causing that to happen, the amnesia. All right, our second one is the evolutionary perspective. Oh, 7. All right, so this one's going to talk about Darwinism. And so you guys have talked about Darwinism both in science and you've talked about it in social studies in terms of social Darwinism, and the whole idea is survival of the fittest. Well, in psychology, we're not talking necessarily about survival of the fittest people. I mean, to an extent we are, but sort of the survival of the fittest behaviors. So we behave the way we do because we inherited those behaviors. And that the behaviors that we have, we must have them because they are helping us to survive. And so it's basically Mother Nature that has made us who we are. And so I love this GIF. This is Homer Simpson eating donuts. He likes donuts. And so we're not writing this part, but how could this behavior have ensured the survival of Homer's ancestors? Well, they made sure that he was able to hunt and he was, successful at providing food for his family. And so maybe he's a little more aggressive. Maybe he's a little more, just always looking for food so that he can survive. Of course, now he's a little plump. Sorry, Homer. All right, our next one, psychodynamic. Oh, look, there's a heart. All right, so psychodynamic is one of the big ones that we talk about in here because the idea came from this guy named Sigmund Freud. And basically what this is saying is that our behavior comes from unconscious things that we are not fully aware of in our waking selves. So we have a crush on the person we have a crush on. We might not know why. There's just something inside that is making us be attracted to them. And according to Freud, a lot of our stuff stems from our childhood. And so, according to Freud, a psychoanalyst, why would they say that somebody always needs to be chewing gum? Now, you probably don't know the answer to this now, but we're going to talk about how Freud's kind of a freaky guy and has a whole lot of ideas about things. So he would actually say something about that you need to focus on your mouth, and we would actually call that, as we go along, an oral fixation. We'll talk more about that later. I like this guy too. The next one is our behavioral perspective. And so with this, Now we're not looking at ourselves biologically. Now we're not looking at ourselves evolutionarily. We're not kind of looking inside our brains. We're focusing on what you can actually observe. So, with our little bug gal or guy, it could be a guy, our ladybug guy, we're focusing on the observable behavior and jumping up and down, smiling, having really weirdly red cheeks. And they only care about the behaviors that impair our living. And so they're not so concerned with, you're not feeling happy today, because you can still function when you're not happy. They care about the things that are making it impossible for you to function. So if you're afraid to fly in a plane, but you need to fly in a plane for work, that's what they're going to care about. Ooh, that's like a scary picture up close. So a behavioral therapist, if you bit your nails when you're nervous, they're not going to focus on calming you down, but they're going to focus on, how to stop you from biting your nails. They're not the Freudian people that are going to try to figure out, like, well, what is it? Like, did something happen when you were a kid? Is this the only way you could have control of your life? No, 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 no. These guys are going to be like saying, all right, this is your problem. Let's fix it. Continuing with behaviorists, they also care about how people learn, and we talk a lot about that in here, and they talk about rewards and punishments. Oh my God, that looks so scary. And so the guy for this is John Watson. And remember, before we talked about Freud for the psychoanalytic. For behaviorist, our guy is John Watson. And again, we'll keep talking about him too. All right, our next one, the cognitive perspective. I'm sad that this guy isn't even a left hand. I need to find more left-handed animations on the internet. All right, so cognitive, in case you weren't aware, that's dealing with your thinking. And I'm making hand gestures and talking with my hands, and you can't see that, but here I am. Just gesture in your head. All right, so this is focusing on how we think or how we process information or encode it. How do we see the world? How did we learn to act when we have sad or happy events? So, oh my gosh, there was this one time where this kid just out of the blue told me that their grandparent died, and I didn't know how to react, and I laughed. The cognitive therapist would want to know why on earth that happened. So they're going to try to change the way that you think. That death is not a bad thing, it's a rebirth or whatever. Or to not be afraid of certain things that you might be afraid of, or to not overreact to certain things. So, so we have this guy that is meeting a girl, and he got rejected by the girl. So instead of just being like all sad and evidently having teeth in your heart, being depressed, maybe you'll see it as an opportunity, that she really wasn't good enough for you. And, honestly, what happened to her? Because at this point she had brown hair and now she has blonde hair. What's going on? What's wrong with her? I don't know. All right, social cultural perspective. So obviously this one is going to focus on basically how society and culture interacts onto your behaviors. So it's going to talk about, how the people around you impact who you are. And in case you were wondering, so yes, this is Glee, and this is Mean Girls. Mean Girls is awesome. I don't know why I still love it. But in case you were wondering, this is an 80s movie. That's right, the 1980s, The Breakfast Club. You should watch it. So even in the same high school, that behaviors can change in accordance with the subcultures. So if you have a friend that all of a sudden started hanging out with a different group of people, and now they're acting differently, well, maybe part of the reason is because they're hanging out with a different group of people, like in Mean Girls, wearing pink and scary things. All right, the next one is the humanistic perspective. I have to tell you, I think the 7 is pretty. Well, except for the gesture thing. So this one, we're kind of talking about your potential and talking about being the best you can be. So it's focusing on growth, your own personal positive growth. And the goal is to have what's called self-actualization. Basically, again, being the very best you can, feeling good about yourself. And so the therapists are going to use active listening, and they're going to, be very positive and upbeat. Like, yeah, yeah, you fell over and ripped your pants in front of everyone, but that's great because you had really awesome underwear on. So anyway, a really good example of someone that's humanistic would be Mr. Rogers. I don't know if you guys remember Mr. Rogers, but he was awesome. He had a neighborhood and puppets. So the big guy for the humanistic psychology is this guy named Maslow. And so, of course, because people like to name things after themselves, he has what's called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so, yeah, his whole thing is reach your maximum potential, that self-actualization, and to better yourself, to be the best you can be. All right, so here's the thing. Which approach is best? Well, you know, there is no one best. Isn't that awesome that I don't have a great answer for you? Basically, are there therapists that only do humanistic? Absolutely. Are there therapists that only do behaviorist? Yes. Are there psychoanalytic experts? Of course. But honestly, all of them have their faults and all of them have their positives. And really, the best thing is kind of putting them all together. So we're going to talk about, some of the individual ones, but, generally, the best thing is if you can put all of them together. Well, guys, thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the big 7 perspectives.